This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and I've been talking to founders and CEOs for the past 5 years, and there's one thing that I've noticed about a lot of them, and that's that they are all faced with what I call the entrepreneur's conundrum. Find a problem, fix a problem. But sometimes founders aren't trying to fix anything or solve an issue. They're inspired to start a company, and that's what happened with today's guest, John Sapiente. John is the CEO of Volition America, a D2C brand dedicated to supporting the families of fallen military members and first responders. We're going to talk about his inspo for starting the company, what it's like to build a brand from the ground up, and what's next for Volition America. John, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thank you very much for joining me today. And I want to start with the genesis of your company, because what's fascinating about the world of e-commerce is that I guess people took back the power. Whereas in the past, you'd have to have a big box store sell your stuff, and then the convergence of technology, social media, and infrastructures that these companies build, that they're able to sell direct to the consumer. And I find it one of the best, and I'll be honest with you, John, I was always wary of D2C brands because I was like, oh God, what if it doesn't fit the return process? What a hassle. Well, most of you in your world, John, you guys have mastered that and made it very easy to do that. But tell me, before we get into like the genesis of the company, like that D2C, like the power of being able to be direct to the consumer, where it's not opaque, where you know who's actually buying the item. Why was that such an important part of what you're doing?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to this about how we landed on the e-commerce space, and it was really a third or fourth step that got us there. But the idea of having all of our brands and all of our brand partners land on one page where we're bringing audiences together, that was important to us. And I think as we go through this podcast, you learn about the mission, it'll pull it together. But I think it's interesting because the e-commerce space is interesting and how direct it is and how great it is. It's a very complex process. I mean, driving traffic, getting the right traffic, getting, the whole Metas and Googles, and it's crazy how to build a brand through an e-commerce site. But it's been really interesting. Like you said, you get direct right to your customers.
Awesome. All right, so let's get to the start of the company. And I believe I remember reading in 2013, you had a patriotic awakening. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if it was sort of a Aaron Rodgers ayahuasca trip or something like that, but tell me
It's
about...
close.
It was close. Okay. Tell me about it.
So I went to a Folds of Honor event, and Folds of Honor, for your listeners who don't know, it's a charity that gives scholarships to the fallen soldiers' families, fallen or severely injured, and now they do first responders. And just to give you a little background, to date they've given $300 million away and 60,000 scholarships. 91 cents on the dollar goes to the recipient. So it's a world-class charity. So I bought a round of golf with Craig Stadler, who's an old Masters champion, and I probably shouldn't say it out loud. I do all the time, but I bought it for the wrong reasons. I wasn't really helping the troops. I wanted to play golf with Craig Stadler. What I didn't know is I bought a round of golf on Memorial Day at the Patriot, which is the home of Folds of Honor, and spent the weekend with the military and their families, and kind of went, holy shit, can't believe, I missed this my whole life. And I got really what the meaning of Memorial Day was, and I also got the meaning of what these troops and families sacrificed for us. So I left there all in on supporting them and our country. And so that was what I call my patriotic awakening, because for 45 years, I was playing golf and barbecuing on Memorial Day. And to this day now, I really appreciate what they do, and it's an important day to our country.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And so you talk about that you obviously have to have enough money to bid on
Yes.
with a Masters champion. So without getting into how much you spend and all that jazz, how were you able to spend that? Like, what were you doing in your point in your life that you said you're 45 years on this planet, sort of like not really aware of the world of this military culture. What were you doing before this patriotic awakening?
Well, my day job, this was really interesting about this brand. Volition America is not my day job. It's a passion project that is coming to life about bringing people together and our country together. But my day job is I own 2 manufacturing companies. So I make automotive parts and medical devices. So I'm a manufacturing guy, and I had this patriotic awakening, and I really became a donor to Folds of Honor. That's how the journey started. So, and I and I did more than just give money to Folds of Honor. I really started bringing my network of friends in. I started going to events and helping support. And I became really good friends with the founder, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney. And he's the one who had the idea for Volition America. So he came to me and, we were going over my name at the beginning, but he calls me Sap because it's Sapiente is a pain in the butt to say. But he said, "Hey, Sap, do you know what volition means? It's the power of choice." And he goes, and it's the most important word in the English dictionary because you can choose to be happy, sad, love, hate. Just know the choices you make, write the legacy of your life. And Dan is an incredibly inspirational guy. So I thought I was getting a life lesson. And he said, "Hey, I got an idea. I got an idea for a business called Volition America, choosing America. And a percentage of everything we sell goes back to help the fallen soldiers and first responder families." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. Good idea, Dan." And he said, "Well, I have a problem." He goes, "I don't have any money and I can't use the charity's money to start the brand. So will you help and join in and help support it and build it?" And so it was kind of an assignment from Colonel Rooney. And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll help support." I had no idea that the journey was going this direction and how hard and heavy lift it was to build a brand. But the idea was to start a brand, a clothing brand that, we were able to put something on you stand for, helped you make better choices every day, and also benefited the military and first responder families.
That's so cool. Now you mentioned you have this manufacturing background, but I don't remember hearing anything about like you're manufacturing like sweatpants or shirts or anything like that. Tell me in terms of that mindset, like is manufacturing? Because you do hear that a lot where
Yeah.
people feel like, no, it's it's not, right?
No, I mean, it was kind of like, it was a funny joke I tell people, but Dan Rooney is a golf professional turned fighter pilot. So he's the 3 tour duty fighter pilot. So his vision was to make jeans, t-shirt, belt buckle, and a hat. So if you watch Top Gun again, he basically wanted to make the Top Gun outfit. And so I'm like, okay, I'll go do that. And I don't know if it's manufacturing background helped me realize I don't know what I'm doing, but think of jeans in a jeans store. There are a bazillion shapes and sizes, long, fat, skinny, 30, 30, 30. I'm looking at it from like, how am I going to know what to manufacture? How am I going to know what to inventory? How do I know what the best fit is? And I'm like, okay, I can't do jeans. I don't know how to do this. So the first, I guess, recognizing I didn't know what I was doing was the first positive. So Dan and I sat and talked again, and he said, "You know what? Folds of Honor is really big in golf. Let's go in golf and start a golf line." So, okay, great. We'll do that. So that was my second assignment. And so as I started researching and networking in golf, I realized that 80% of their sales come from green grass. And what I mean by green grass is pro shops. So now, if you look at it from a distribution model, who's driving around with the bag of polos, shop to shop to shop? I've got 2 businesses to run and I got a day job, so I'm not doing it. So I realized now I know how to make it, but I don't have a distribution channel. So in my journey, I've learned that the Volition America idea was great. I also learned that executing it, starting from scratch, building a clothing brand and going around and distributing it, I didn't have the bandwidth to do. So we started a different approach to it, which was because everyone thinks it's unbelievable, maybe we could license the brand. So we started cold calling major brands, and we met the CEO and president of Puma, and they fell in love with it and started the Volition America golf line. So what we ended up doing is they had manufacturing capabilities, they had design capabilities, they had all the distribution channels. And so now and they had a huge audience. So now we got a major jump into golf. And the thing that we did with them is we infused a story into their brand. So instead of just selling Puma with a basic, style, now they had this patriotic themed clothing line that they could tell a story. And what they found was it opened a ton of doors for them. And so Volition became a lead-in that people wanted Volition. Then they ended up becoming Puma customers after. And so it was really a win-win for both brands. And on top of that, Folds of Honor, one, not only got money, but two, they got a ton of brand awareness that they would have never gotten because of what we did. So that was how the business model started. It was kind of a understanding your capabilities, understanding your bandwidth and how to do things, and finding a solution that worked. And so I don't know if it was smart or dumb luck or what it was, but that's how the brand started.
And when you were using doing the Puma deal, were you guys doing the manufacturing, or it was straight up licensing to
No,
them?
we licensed to them, and basically they were doing everything. So now with e-commerce, like where we started, we're helping drive sales and bringing audiences to Puma. But at the beginning, with Puma, was a heavy lift. They did the
Wow.
majority of the work for us.
So tell me about this transition from being sort of locked in to being this relationship Puma to essentially striking out on your own and going direct to the consumer. What was that like?
Well, it was funny. So we signed the deal with them in 2017. We got a big lift in 2019 because Gary Woodland, who played very well yesterday on the PGA Tour, wearing our gear, came to us in 2018. He came to us. He had just finished his Under Armour contract and said, "Do you mind if I wear your stuff while I'm looking for a new deal?" I'm like, sure, that'd be great. So throws on the polo, ends up second to the PGA. We do really well. We end up signing him. He ends up winning the U.S. Open in 2019. And, walking up 18 and Jim Nance is talking about Folds of Honor and Volition America. So the life of the brand took off in 2019. 2020, COVID kicked in and created a whole havoc of hard to find partners because they were having trouble just getting inventory and getting product, and it was chaos. So after that settled down, what I really realized was a couple things. Is one, we needed other best-in-class brand partners in other segments. We use a term at Volition America, uniform for life. And what we want to do is give something, we want to inspire people through our brand. We're not just trying to sell a polo. And so we're a mission, a movement. And so we wanted to give people something they could go in their closet every day and put on and say, this is what I stand for. And oh, by the way, I'm helping troops and these families every time I put it on. And so what came to me is, what if we had a best-in-class partner in every segment? So we have a baseball deal with Marucci Invictus. We have a watch deal with Luminox. We have a sunglass deal with Revo. We have a cigar line with Gurkha Cigar. We have a Unreal athleisure partnership starting in a few weeks. So the idea is no matter what you're doing, you can go in and put Volition America on and have a uniform for life. And so as we built out these partnerships, we needed a place for all these audiences to come together. And every time we add a brand partner, we add a whole new audience. And then each brand partner gets a new audience from all these partnerships. So the e-commerce is really a landing place. And then what we see happen a lot is 30% of our sales, or 30% of the people buying will add on another brand when they buy something. So they're getting these incremental sales. So beyond all the good we're doing and all the positive, we're also doing really good for the brands. And I think the last piece to the story is we're not asking them to make new innovative products. We're basically saying, take your greatest hits and volitionize them. So we already know the consumer likes the product. What we're doing is we're infusing a story and patriotism into the brand. And so it's not a cheesy flag shirt. It could be blacks, grays, silvers. It could be a little Morse code thing. One of our most popular things is called the Check Six line. And Dan's the pilot, so when you check your six, you check behind you. So on our spine, we put inspirational terms down the spine. So it's been a really cool journey. I've learned a ton about brand building that I would never have known from my other jobs, but it's really neat.
That's so awesome. And it's so funny too, because we started this conversation talking about ecom, but you guys do ecom very differently from most people, because most people it's very much like very siloed. The Vioris and the Fabletics of the world are just selling their products, and there's no, we don't know the behind the scenes of who's making the products, if they are partnering with somebody, something like that. Is this model different from anything else?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anyone else who does it like this.
Well, what we've done, and I didn't copy anybody. I kind of came up with these ideas, just, I'll call it again, dumb luck. We're a combination of really 3 or 4 brands that have done really well. And for like the e-commerce site, I use Fanatics as an example. When you think sports merch and you want to go buy something and, team logo, you end up on Fanatics webpage. So my vision was to build the Fanatics of patriotic gear. So when you think of patriotic gear, everything's on our website. The other brand that I think we model really well is Tom's Shoes. So every time you buy a pair of shoes, somebody benefits and gets a pair of shoes. So same thing with Volition America. Every time you buy something, you're helping a family by doing this. And then the third piece is Supreme. Supreme built the brand on collabs. And so we have these 3 silos of our business, which make it super unique. But we're a combination of our own product, which we've come up with our own Volition America line now, which we're designing and manufacturing our own clothing line. And then we're bringing in all these brand partners. So we're a combination of direct to consumer with our own brand and a drop ship e-commerce marketplace.
That's so cool. That's brilliant. And I think the Fanatics example is perfect. I think for most people, like if you go to Fanatics, you can buy a Nike jersey, but you can also buy an Adidas pants. So, which is like, you can't usually do that at the Nike store or Adidas store. So if you don't mind sharing, how does the guts and the sausage made in terms of like, if you go to Volition America and you order one of the Puma lines or Luminox lines, like, are you guys handling distribution? How does the distribution work?
Well, we have a combination of all of our private labels warehoused in our warehouse, and we manage all that. And everything else is a drop ship. So it automatically sends a or order into the Puma site, automatically drops in, and then they ship it, and we get all the tracking information. So it's a very typical drop ship affiliated marketing e-commerce site. And what's really funny is I didn't even know any of these terms 4 years ago. So I'm teaching myself as I go.
That's pretty awesome. Hey, listen, that's usually the best way to learn, right? So let me ask you, because everything is politics now. Like, you can't, like, literally anything you could think of is politics. And you discussed the mission, and you've said the word mission a couple times. And I know what the brand mission is: unity over politics. John, if you could figure this out, you could probably run for office. But how do you have
Can't
a
run for
brand?
office.
But no, I'm saying, if you could figure this out, you have a brand that is tied into patriotism, and as you know, conservatives and Republicans have sort of co-opted patriotism for some whatever reason. Again, we're not going to get into this. I want to know, in terms of how you do this, the idea of emphasizing unity over politics, because, like I said, politics is everything now.
So that was interesting that you lead that into that, because 2014, what really bothered me, which inspired me to do this, is our country is separated. And I'm a big believer that the country's built on conflicting ideologies, and that's good to have different opinions on both sides. Even in my businesses every day, I joke, but we all go in a room and we argue till we come to a good decision, and then we're united going forward. And so the country got to this place when, I go on for hours about news and all this other stuff that's causing it. But I believe in my heart of heart that you can be really far left and love your country, and you can be really far right and love your country. And so I use a term at Volition America is, we're not red and we're not blue, we're red, white, and blue. And the idea is to bring people together in a very non-political way. And, the flag, obviously people say it's right leaning and it's red and it's this. And I don't believe that. I think 80% of the country is more together than we think. And we're being polluted by noise on the way left on the news and way right on the news, because it sells news. And what we really need to do is just come together, make better choices. And so that's the idea of the brand. Let's celebrate America. Let's choose America, and let's make better choices. Because I could argue storming the Capitol was a bad decision, and all the looting was a bad decision. Those are bad choices. So, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. So that's the brand is really about.
Some people might, some people might disagree with you.
Yeah. Basically, the brand is really about standing up and saying, this is what I stand for. And despite some of our warts, America's still a great country. There's still a lot of great things about our country that we don't talk about. And let's do all the things we can to help. And that's great. One of the things that really would, if this brand, and I could build it to the level I want to build it, I want to choose all things America, not just military and first responders. I want to do land conservation. I want to do helping the homeless. I want to pick a lot of great charities about choosing America charities and really help America, and then bring us together. My wife and I laugh all the time. Like, how could I be the guy that is out there bringing us together? Who am I? And so it's kind of cool to be able to do this. It's humbling.
That's so cool. And you do this with people, and you talk about the mission and these people, and you've often talked about hiring engaged people. How do you get to that point? Because I think everyone assumes when you hire someone and give them a check every 2 weeks, they're going to be engaged. But Sap, as you know, not the case.
Yeah. Well, it is a business. It is a business that's for a for-profit business. And so even when we go to brand partners, in the end of the day, it's got to be a good business decision for them, even if it's good. They're not just going to take all the bandwidth and all these efforts and partner with you if they're not going to make any money. And so what we do is, first and foremost, I will not partner with someone that doesn't believe in our mission. So that's really, so whether you come work for me, whether you're ambassador or affiliated, if you don't believe in folds of honor and you don't believe in this choosing America process and it's just a money grab for you, those aren't partners for us. It's really, I want people gushing over how cool it is and how great it is before we even partner. And that's what we've done so far. We've been really fortunate to have really great partners, but it's all based on that.
Wow, that's good. All right, so you talk about how much has changed over the last 4 or 5 years with the company, and yourself. Let's get into yourself part of it. Like, you make it. Maybe it's just your attitude and your chillness, your Midwestern ability, but you all make this sound very easy. And I think anyone listening or watching this knows what you pulled off is close to impossible. What were some of the things that you learned that you, again, you mentioned some of the things you're like, oh, shit, I didn't know any of these terms meant. What were some of the things, like in terms of the macro of it all, like that you learned about yourself, whether as a leader, whether someone who's creating a movement, like what's one of the lessons you learned during the last, 4 or 5 years?
Well, I've always worked hard and I've always grinded, but I've never realized that um, I could outwork everybody. With this, I've outworked everybody. The amount of level of effort that's gone into this, because I was a one-man band, cold calling, all the stuff that I did as a 20-year-old, back to cold calling and emailing and texting. But I always joked that I was too stupid to know I shouldn't be doing this. And the other term I use a lot is prisoner of common assumption. And what I mean by that is most people tell you, dude, you can't start a brand, don't do it. And you go, oh yeah, you're probably right, and you don't do it. And I tell my employees this all the time is, they don't want to go ask someone to work a Saturday because they probably don't want to do it. Well, you don't even know, you didn't ask them. So through this process, I have tried things that I shouldn't have tried. And I think it's the joke of I'm too stupid to know I shouldn't. If you don't try, you'll never know if it's going to happen. And so like right now, one of the things I'm doing right now, which is absurd, is I'm trying to start a TV series called Volition America Patriot Games. And the idea behind it is it's kind of I don't know, you're too young, but it's a Battle of the Network Stars. Do you remember that when we were kids?
I'm quite old enough to remember
Oh,
that and remember
well,
seeing like the
you look
likes of,
good for your age. That's
yeah,
good.
yeah, Joe Namath, wrestling with
Yeah.
I don't know, Cheryl Tiegs. It was just a mishmash of celebrities from TV and sports that would play in these games. But yeah, so but you see like playing up the celebrity angle of it, right?
Yeah. So we're trying to start a competitive, unscripted TV series that basically will be a professional athlete, a celebrity, and a military person and do some kind of sports topic. And then it'll be like that, Dancing with Stars or whatever, a single elimination each week and people come off the show. So season one, we had the idea of doing golf because we're already so big in golf, and it would be a professional golfer, a celebrity, and a military person. The military people that would qualify are right in. So we'd get a ton of great stories and things and, special people on the show. But the Navy's agreed to give us an aircraft carrier, and we were going to do a shooting of a skills competition. So a bunch of different shots and fun things with fun celebrities. And we're in the discussions with a couple major networks right now about bringing the Volition America Patriot Games to life. And then every year the venue would change. So the idea behind it, or my vision behind it, was if you think of UFC, they were a fight club and then they started doing on TV and the brand got so much recognition and took off. So the idea behind it is the awareness that it would bring for Volition America and Folds of Honor. But it goes back to my point. If you don't try, I talked to all sorts of people on that journey because I knew nothing about TV. Now I'm throwing out words like unscripted TV, like I'm an expert. But, oh, John, you don't want to go right to the network. It's too big. It's too hard. Just do some syndicated stuff to start, and then the networks will pick it up. No, it's no different than, when I went to Puma and knocked on the door, our team did. Um, you gotta have big visions and you gotta be willing to go out there and fail. And if you fail, then you pivot and figure out the next move. So that's what I learned about myself, is never to not think as big as I can and be smart about it. And that's kind of what got us here today, I guess.
That's awesome. There's one thing from doing, business media for the last few years, John, that's annoying as all hell, is people saying, embrace failure, fall in love with failure. And it to me, I laugh at it because, yeah, it's easy to say that, after you've healed of the 10 years of it.
Yeah.
But when people are going through failure, man, it sucks. So I'm curious, is there a point over like this time that you've evolved from like, a guy making, car parts to a guy who's pitching unscripted television to networks. What kind of failures did you have, and what were some that were like, you know what, I'm never going to do that again?
That's a good question. The first thing I can tell you is everything takes way longer than I've ever thought it would. That's the most frustrating thing in the process for me, is that it's just slow, and you think you have a deal done, and then they fall through. But most of it's cliche, but most of the things that I failed at were learning things for me as well. Like, we had a big licensing company out of New York wanted to buy us, and I threw out a number in a meeting. This was like year 2 in business. They loved our idea so much. They're like, "This is great. We can scale this thing and make it $1 billion brand. We want to buy you." So I didn't really want to sell it because I liked it. So I threw out a stupid number, and they said yes. And then that was one of those things in the meeting. You walk out and you're like, "Oh shit, I didn't ask for enough money." But it ended up falling through, and I spent a year with them because I thought their intentions were there. And I learned a lot about contract side of it and making sure everything's tight before I do it. But I wasted a year from 2019 to 20. But again, I learned so much about brand building from them because they had done it, even though I wasted a year of actual sales and growing the company. So every failure you do learn, you got to be willing to look back and lick your wounds and get up. So I don't know. I don't know why, but the failures roll off of me. You just keep pounding forward.
That's cool. Well, let's wrap this up talking about sort of like the inspiration behind it. And that's the veterans and the folks that have, fought for our country. Outside of donations, tell me about how Volition connects to our veterans and even our active service members. What are you guys up to in there?
Well, most of our connections through Folds of Honor. So last year we gave back over $1 million Folds of Honor, which I was really proud of. And my original goal was to be the largest corporate donor to Folds of Honor, which I think Budweiser is right now at around $7 million a year. So we're doing really well there. We're trying to do more, and like this TV show and things like this will bring more active and veterans into direct communication with us. But that's really what I'd like to do. I'd like to start a Volition Scholarship fund where we have people writing in and qualifying for the Volition Scholarships. But along my journey, I've met just the most amazing people and amazing families. And it's been, again, it's super humbling that what we're doing is, it's funny when you own, like I own these 2 other businesses, that when I get an order or we do something or we're growing, and you have a little bit of an ego about yourself that I did this, I bought this medical company, I grew it into this, and and you kind of got a swag about yourself. Volition America, I'm almost struggling with that, being the face of the brand, and why do I get to do this, and it's such an important thing to do. So I'm a little humbled that, like, even being on your show, that I get to do this and talk about this journey, because it wasn't my idea. I'm just the business behind it that put the model together. But starting a brand organically, I don't know, the people have done that and done that well. It's unbelievable. I mean, so I'll tell you that for your listeners, I listened to Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight's memoirs.
Yep.
And it actually made me happy, because Phil Knight is going through all the shit he went through in the early days to just survive, with the tiger trying to steal his shoe and doing this and taking away his distribution. And, he had this wonderful deal with this company in Asia that was working fine, and then they screwed him over, and now he had to go make his own shoe. And so it's aligned with all the stuff I've seen of how hard it is to start a brand, and then to look at what he accomplished. It's unbelievable. And so I take a lot of pride in the fact that we're just pounding through this, and hopefully one day we are a power brand too.
Awesome. Good stuff. John, if folks want to find out more about you and the company, where should they start?
VolitionAmerica.com.
Wonderful. John, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about our collabs with Forbes Books, South by Southwest, and Entrepreneur, go to theauthoritycompany.com.